Hello and welcome to Clickbait. Now, as you may know, I'm a big fan of film photography. Although I use digital for pretty much everything for work these days, client photo shoots, whatever, YouTube I'm shooting on right now, it's all digital. It's on the Nikon Z6 II, which you're watching on as we speak, but I still shoot loads of film. This stuff was all shot on Kodacolor Gold over the last few months, either on this EOS 600 or possibly on a Minolta X300S, which is why it's quite good not to get hung up on the equipment, because it's what comes out of the camera really that is what's more important. But I know there are a lot of people who've got into digital photography, maybe just through their phones or something like that, in the digital age, who've never tried film photography, but want to get into it because there is something very special about film. I shot a very similar picture to this on a digital camera, and it does have more clarity, more range, more color range, and tonal range than this, but there is something very otherworldly about this. It's real liminal space stuff. That just really looks good. Well, it looks, I don't know, a bit more spooky on analog film. These ones are just walk-up street photos in Lisbon, and again I shot similar stuff on digital, but these film versions, they've got something else. It's the grain, the texture. It kind of takes you to a place in a way that digital doesn't. It's a fascinating thing. So it complements digital rather than replaces it. But I know many people who are interested in doing it are concerned that it's going to be too expensive, whether it's the processing in the film or the equipment itself. But processing in film, really not a problem. It did get a bit tricky for a while, but it's got, like vinyl records, it's so popular now. Places like Analog Wonderland, and there's a link in the description below for this, they've got huge ranges of film, from really sort of cheap entry level, get yourself started and learn the craft kind of film, all the way up to really specialist stuff that cost a little bit, and they've got processing for it, and they can scan it and just WeTransfer it or post the negatives back like I do to scan yourself. Everything's available. It's all really easy to do, but that's the practical end of it. But what about the equipment? Again, people imagine it's going to be expensive to get into film, but it really isn't. And case in point, not long ago I was out and about, and you kind of have to keep your eyes open. Charity shops, Facebook Marketplace, eBay, that kind of thing. Right place, right time. And I happened to be talking to someone who was doing a house clearance and had not just a camera, but a complete system for sale for £30. So this is a camera, and I think 3 lenses and a flash and some other bits for 30 quid. And it's a good camera as well. I don't know if it works. I hope it works. We'll find out later on, I hope. It takes a pair of LR44 batteries, which, having been sat in this camera for a very long time, don't work. So can't really tell. It is an electromechanical camera, so it's mechanical wind on, mechanical rewind, but an electronic shutter. So you can control your shutter speed electronically, but manually focus it. So it can be shot in full manual, shutter priority, aperture priority, or full manual obviously. I think there's a full program mode on here as well. I'm not really that familiar with the X300S. It came out as an X300 in 1990. It was a kind of a slightly more automated version of the X700, which is the perfect learner camera really, or first mechanical camera. The X700, really, really good. Also takes this same lens, which is the Minolta MC bayonet mount, because there are 1,012,000,000 of those lenses knocking about the world. So they're relatively affordable, and there's lots of choice, and they're pretty decent quality as well. Minolta made really good lenses. Minolta were the first company to bring consumer autofocus to the market, and we'll talk about that in another video soon, because we've got some of those on the shelf over there too, and I use them quite a lot. But let's talk about what I got today. £30. First of all, I got the camera, the X300S, which is a great camera because it's got aperture priority, shutter priority, and manual focus. And the aperture is on the ring on the lens. You can learn about how all this stuff actually works. So if you're getting into photography for the first time, doing it properly, if you like driving a manual car after coming from an automatic, this is a really good way of doing it with the ring aperture, so you really do get a feel for what's going on. Got the camera, that's fitted with a 50mm f1.4 Minolta lens. And I'll just quickly interrupt myself to say I hadn't looked at this lens properly. It's not a 50mm 1.4. I couldn't see it through the filters. It's a 58mm f1.4, which is actually even more desirable. It's well, varying between, well, 85 and 135 pounds on eBay. So this lens alone was worth the entire purchase price of this small bag of camera stuff, which is fabulous. I mean, look at the front element on that. That's just beautiful. This is actually a thing that Fuji have now kind of gone back to as well. They've got a 58mm. It's like a portrait / standard lens. It's a really, really nice bit of glass from Fuji. And looking through the viewfinder on this here, it's a really lovely bit of glass as well, which is another thing which suggests whoever bought this camera back in 1990 was really quite into their photography. I'm guessing probably portraits or something, to be doing, or to be needing that kind of lens over the standard 50mm, which is nice. So that's a great starter setup right there, but it gets better because there's a bag of bits. First of all, we've got ourselves this, a Minolta 28-70, which is a really short, useful, everyday walk-around zoom. So 28mm wide angle for landscapes, buildings, parties, groups, 70mm short telephoto. That gets you into portraits and things. It's not fixed aperture, it's a variable one, so it opens at f3.5 when you're fully wide at 28, closes down to f4.8 when you're at 70mm, so you know it's a relatively cheap kit lens, but it's still a useful thing to have in the bag. It gives you a bit more range than the 50mm when you're just walking around for the day. Doesn't end there though. £30, all that £30 so far. Next up, we've got ourselves a handy little leather case, ideal for putting a small bottle of scotch in on a walk around because it gets cold in those days out. This contains a telephoto, a big telephoto. This one isn't Minolta, this is a Panagore. A Panagore, not a bad brand actually in the old days. Again, Minolta MC bayonet mount, but this is an 85-205. It's not very fast, I'm guessing, judging by the size of it. It is f3.8 all the way through. That's better than I thought actually. It looks a little bit Russian in its design, but it also looks absolutely mint in its condition. I mean, that is a lovely bit of glass, that. Does it open and close down? Aperture ring on the back of it? Yeah, aperture ring works. The zoom works and the focus appears to do something, so that's a full 28-205mm setup right there. 30 quid, don't let me forget you. Not only that, but back in the day, you couldn't just do file, save a copy and get a second copy of your image. If you wanted another copy of your negative or your slide, you had to physically go and take a photo of it, and that's what this thing is. This clunks into the camera. This is set up to be exactly the perfect focal length to pop a slide in the front of here. You put a light source, like light box or something, in front of it, and take a photo of your own slide or your own negative, and that's how you get a second copy of the original image. So yeah, that's a fairly specialised thing. So I'm guessing someone was, well, a bit of a photography enthusiast. Maybe they were selling pictures to photo libraries or something needing duplicates, or they're putting pictures into a lot of competitions. Hard to say really. But anyway, it doesn't end there, because we've also got a Minolta flash gun. This is a Minolta Auto 220X, takes 4 AA batteries, looks like, oh it is a hammerhead. So it's a bounce flash. This is someone who actually cared enough to get a bounce flash gun, and that means you fire the flash off the ceiling so you don't get horrible white-faced ghost photos with red eyes. You get nicely illuminated. That's actually how I'm lighting this room right now. There's a constant light source bouncing off the ceiling, which makes life better. So we've got that. I've noticed this 50mm lens actually has a pair of filters on the front of it, a skylight and a UV, which is always quite handy to have one or t'other on there, so I'm not sure why you would want two at the same time, but who knows, because reasons. It doesn't end there though. We've also got, well, rather unfortunately, got a handy little bag, which is quite nice, and instructions for everything, so I can figure out how this thing works, including the slide duplicator. Yeah, so I've never used an X300, and the buttons aren't very clearly labelled, so actually having a handbook is quite useful, really. Oh wow, a laminated card for Dollars. Ah, comparative film speeds. This goes back a while. This is a 1990 camera. I think ISO and DIN were kind of fighting for dominance back at that time. I've also got, I noticed in the side of here, some filters, 55mm filter thread, so quite a handy common size. I've got a couple of close-up filters, which, if you've never used one of them before, it is literally what it is. It's a filter that screws onto the front of the camera, and it's like a magnifying glass for your camera. So you can do like macro photography, not exactly on the cheap, but certainly a little bit easier. This was a polarizing box, and he's scribbled close-up on the front of it, so we've got a pair of close-ups, and this one actually is a polarizing filter. I love a polarizing filter. I never shoot anything without a polarizer because, well, frankly, it just brings all the colors out. It just makes everything better. This is proof that you don't need to spend big money to get into film photography. This is a really nice camera. If you're happy with manual focus, and there's no reason not to be, if your eyes are good enough to look through a camera, they're good enough to manually focus, and because this is a 1990 manual focus intended camera, it's got a split screen focusing screen in there, so you can, as you focus it, the two halves of the image come into sharp point focus as it focuses, so it makes it really easy. Even if you can't see it in focus yourself, you can tell if the image is in focus. It's a nice size, it's a nice weight, it feels nice in your hand. All I need to do now is find out if it works. Right, I've been and acquired some LR44 batteries, which at a cost of £8 for 4 means 2 of them at £4, or approximately 15% of the entire camera investment is now made up of batteries. So let's cross our fingers and hope this thing still works. And this is the worry with 1990s technology, is that some of it is really good and really simple. However, at this sort of 35-year-old age, it is starting to go a bit wonky. That's why we can never live in a cashless society. You need 5p's to do things up. Right. On. Oh, it works! It actually works! Hey! I'm going to take your picture. That doesn't work anymore. Why doesn't it work anymore? Why has it only got one click in it? Oh man. Was that it? Oh, please don't be dead. It worked once. Why won't you work again? Now, bizarrely, I do think maybe it's not happy there's no film in it itself. So I'm going to try putting some film in. This is an old roll of Fuji Provia, really nice chrome transparency film, but I don't know if it's been used or if it's just old stock. So I don't dare use it, and I don't want to pay to process it either. So I can use this one just to test whether it works or not. Oh dear, no, this looks like it might be dead. That's really sad. No, it seems to be dead. It is no more. Oh, that's really, really sad. It's fired once, it's fired twice in fact. So I was wrong. I was wrong. There are bargains out there, but they don't always work. Good news! It works again. I've taken the batteries in and out, reset it. I think it wasn't happy that there was no film in it, and that kind of confused it. There is a little loading indicator thing on there. Now I just need to work out how on earth you switch it out of automatic mode into aperture or shutter priority. But the fact it's now fired a fast shutter speed looking at the light and a slower shutter speed looking into the darker areas suggests the meter is working. That's fantastic. That's really cool. So I've got myself, for £30, a complete Minolta MC bayonet system. That's incredible, isn't it? There are some real bargains out there. This needs a really good, nice clean up, and it's ready to use. And I need to read the instructions and work out how on earth you work it. Wow, okay, a couple of seconds with the manual and I've got things figured out. Aperture priority is literally, you set whatever aperture you want it to do. Shutter priority is, you use a little dial here to choose the shutter speed on the top, from bulb, or 1 second, all the way up to 1,000th of a second, or click it back round to auto, and it'll set the shutter speed automatically. That's really good. 90s technology was so good, so simple. What a lovely little camera. I was going to stick this on eBay, but I'm quite tempted to hang on to it now. The focusing screen is really nice and bright. This is brilliant. What a great little camera. Although it's only running on a couple of tiny button cells, they're not doing a lot, they're just running a tiny little microprocessor. All the heavy work is being done by your thumb. It's just releasing electronically the spring for the shutter. Well, so there we go. The moral of this particular video is, if you want to get into photography, start scouting around, because you will find some absolute bargains. I've got some other bargains I'm using as well at the moment. I'll tell you about them in future videos, but right now I've got to decide whether to clean this up and bung this on eBay, maybe better make a little tidy profit, or actually use the thing and get some fun out of it, because, well, I've never had one of these generation of Minoltas before. And as I'm filming little extra bits after the end of this video, I will just throw in just to say that this isn't about me saying, yay, I've bought something cheap and I'm going to flog it for a fortune. I say a fortune, this is probably about 50 quid, this camera body, if I was to sell it for full price on eBay right now. Maybe another £85 for this lens, £25 for the big zoom, 30 or 40 for the short zoom, so 200 quid probably. So yeah, it's a small profit, but the point of this video is, if you want to get into film photography, you don't need to spend big money. There are bargains out there to be had, and if you want to get into film photography for little money, you can do it. Interesting, huh? So if you've enjoyed this, please hit like and subscribe and join me for some more photo antics in the next episode of Clickbait.